Hi, I'm Bill Hitchcock, and I'm going to run through some of the specifications of an Excel workbook. These are just some basic things that we want everybody to know. And on our spreadsheet, I'm going to go back to the Home tab here, and I'll start out in cell A1. We've got columns, rows, cells, sheet tabs, all sorts of things. So we're going to write down on here, we'll write down the word columns, type some text in our cell. We're going to type in the word rows, we'll type in cells, we'll type in sheets, just to give us some ideas. So with all of these cells, you can see we can type in three different things. We can type in text, we can type in numbers, and we can type in formulas and functions. So let's start out with some of the columns. I'm going to save what I'm working on here. And with columns, those are just specified by letters. So for instance, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and I can just keep cursoring out here. And as I do that, notice column A is kind of disappeared. I can only see a certain part of the window. If I get out past column Z, those letters start over again. A, B, A, C, and I can keep on going out, 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 out. Eventually I get to AZ, again it starts over. A, BA, BB, BC, and so on. And I can just hold my key down and I'm going to keep on going out and out and out. Well, one of the things I want to do is I want to get back to the beginning of my spreadsheet. So if you hold your control key, and I'll just use my left hand, hold my control key down, it's down on the lower, on my keyboard it's in the lower left hand corner. And then in the upper right hand corner of my keyboard, so with my right hand I'll hit the home key once, and it takes me back to cell A1. In general, it always will do that. So control and the home key takes you back to cell A1. All right, for rows. Well, rows obviously start in row number 1, and if I scroll down, we have the same kind of thing. You can see row 1 is scrolled off the top of the screen, and we're going down, and I can just keep on holding this down. If I hit my page down key, I actually go a little bit faster. I go about 10, 20 rows at a time. I can just hold it down, and you can see I'm scrolling through a whole bunch of rows, and it seems like they go on forever. So let's hit Control and Home, and we're back up to cell A1. A quicker way to move is if you're in a blank cell here, for instance, if I hit my End key, END, I hit that once, and down in the lower left hand corner on the status indicator, you can see it says End Mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my arrow keys. So on my keyboard, they're in the lower right hand corner. I'm going to hit the right arrow key, and it goes all the way out until it can't go any farther. It hits the last column. So my last column is XFD. So let's hit Control Home. So we've got A through XFD, and then later we'll figure out how many columns that actually is. So let's try that with rows. I'll hit the End key, down arrow, and my last row is 1,048,576. So I'm going to hit Control and Home, and let's type in 1,048,576. So now let's try to figure out how many columns that is. So what I can do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to type in the number 1. And then next to it, I want to type in a function just to add 1 to that previous cell. So I'm going to say it equals the previous cell, and I'm just using my arrow key, pointing over to it. And if you look down at the status indicator, it says that I'm pointing, or I'm in point mode right now. I'll type in a plus sign, type in the number 1, hit enter, and I get the number 2. Now granted, I could have just typed in the number 2, that would work fine, but the reason why I did that is I want to be able to copy this function and copy that all the way out to XFD. So if I hit Control C to copy it, hold my Shift key, cursor over a few columns to the right, hit enter, and I get 3, 4, and 5. So this is kind of an important concept that we have here. When I type in this formula, it says give me the contents of A10 plus 1. In other words, it takes the cell that's 1 over to the left, adds 1 to it. That concept is known as the relative cell position. So when I copied it over to the right, it's no longer A10, instead it says give me B10. In other words, it shifted everything over 1 to the right. Then I get C10, D10, and so on. It's always saying give me the contents of the cell that's 1 to the left, add 1 to it, and then go on. So let's copy that, hold my shift key down, hit the end key once for the end indicator, and then right arrow, and it's going all the way out to XFD. Now I'm going to copy this or paste this in. So all I need to do is hit my enter key, because down at the bottom it tells me select the destination. That's what I've done. Press enter or choose paste. So I'll hit enter. And I've got all these numbers here, and it's telling me which column is which. So column P happens to be the 16th column. Column Q is the 17th, and so on. So I want to find out where XFD is. I'll hit the end key once. Notice the end mode comes on over here in the lower left hand corner. Right arrow, and we find out that the last column is actually 16,384. So let's hit Ctrl+home. For my columns, I'm going to type in 16,384. Now those seem like a little bit odd numbers, and the idea is that they're based off of powers of 2. So I'll type in another formula here. If I type in equals 2 caret, which raises something to an exponent, 2 to the third, it's going to take 2 times 2 times 2, and I get 8. Well, if I take and change this formula to 2 to the fourth, I'll get 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or 8 times 2, or 16. And sure enough, I get 16. So if I keep doubling this, and what we can try doing is let's type in, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just take and say equals 2 caret to the F1 power. 2 to the first is 2. I'll copy this down by double clicking on that little black box called the fill handle. And if I type in these numbers here, here's 2 to the 6th, 2 to the 7th, 2 to the 8th, and we see each time it's doubling that amount. So if we change this around a little bit, I'm going to say equals the previous cell plus 1. Copy this down, and let's change this number now and try the 9th. And there's 2 to the 10th, 2 to the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. 2 to the 14th happens to be 16,384. So that would be another way of doing it. Equals 2 caret 14th. You get that same number. Just to give you an idea how many columns there happen to be. All right, let's keep on expanding that. So let's try to the 17th and see what happens. And when I do the 17th, you can see I'm getting some bigger numbers. So let's format these numbers with a comma format, and we'll get rid of the decimal places to make them a little bit more readable. There's 131,000, 262,524. Here we've got 1,048,576, 2 to the 20th. So this number here equals 2 caret 20. That's the same as what we found out with the number of rows that we have. So for numbers of cells in a sheet, we just multiply those two numbers. Equals this times this, the 16,000 times the 1 million. It should give us roughly 16 million, a little bit more than that. And it turns out it's actually 17 billion. I'm sorry, I said 16 million. It should have been 16 billion. And let's format these with decimal points. There's how many sheets that we have. And actually that number is this, or that's how many cells we have on this one sheet. It's equal to 2 caret to the 34th. In other words, when you multiply exponents, you just add those two up. 14 plus 20 equals 34. There's my 17 billion 179,869,184. Depending on how many sheets you have, if you have 4 sheets, just take that number times your 4 sheets, and you can see quickly how many different cells, over 69 billion cells, that I'd have. So on this particular sheet, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sheets so far. So let's just type in the number 5, and you can see this workbook's got potentially over 85 billion cells. So I hope that gives you some ideas about the kinds of things that we can type into cells. We've got text, numbers, and formulas. We did examples of all those. We probably don't want to save this row here, because if we would accidentally print this out, it's going to print for thousands of pages because it's going out there for 16,000 rows. So I'm just going to right click on this row here, delete it, but we'll keep the rest of this. Maybe rename our old blank sheet, and let's just call this the, I'll right click on that and we'll call it cols, rows, cells, sheets. And it's also the same thing that I have on the specifications, just to kind of give you a heads up about what we have there. So let me stop here, and good luck working on your spreadsheets. Try some of this stuff out, get some idea about how big these spreadsheets are, and you should be good.